I did that the previous times too. Found one or two people to help me setting a project up. Because before you can even be public, you have to make like documentation or subsidy requests, set up a website, develop concept art, looking at the topic, like is this feasible, should we expand it, or how to do it. And those people typically also the core concept makers. So originally I invited David for concept art. He was a candidate for the previous project for Peach.
Don called me because he have already my address about this old Peach project as a spare artist, and he was just saying me that he was looking for some people to make the Durian core team. And so I was Don, me, and Giuseppe Canino, a nice Italian artist, and Giuseppe couldn't go into Durian because of his job, so Don say, okay, I will take one there is on my spare list, and it was Colin.
Yep, I was obviously really intrigued and interested, and was like, yes, of course, I'm interested, and tell me all about it. And Tan already had this vision for what the project should be, and already had an idea of what he wanted, and we had technical targets and also a basic genre.
The fantasy movie come very naturally because of the nature of my portfolio. At the end, we was just knowing something before all the team come. It would be a movie with a girl and a dragon. That was just and a warrior girl.
But basically, beyond that, nothing was set. Tan was going to get a writer. He was interested in getting Martin Ludwig involved in the project. He has a real reputation, and Tan was really excited to work with them, and I was too, definitely.
So that was the start. Colin, David, combine it with Martin, work a little bit on scripts, do a public call, and then we got 150 people applying, which was far too many.
Entries were trickling in first few weeks, and then like the last few days was a deluge.
We spent 1 month and a half to do a review of all the portfolio, and taking a lot of time with Don on IRC, on a channel with Colin, just to say which one we like. We make a rating system with a big table with all the artists.
It's still really hard to select. So we had 24 people on the short list, and even if you look back, it could have been easily 30 or 40 people. They were all good. And then even from the 24, we only had to pick like 4. I'm good at that in, and maybe we can add 1 or 2 still, but who? Yeah, it's,
Making the switch to Blender 2.5 full-time is taking a fair bit of getting used to. Partially because of the bugs and certain things aren't finished, but partially because I'm just very used to the older interface.
We're kind of getting all the frustration, working in a production with tools that are still growing.
The first couple weeks were pretty difficult.
And that's kind of scary because we have, the developers are working really, really, really hard, but there's only so many of them, and each of them only has so much time.
When we started off, there was quite simple things were missing from Blender, things you'd expect, just buttons that artists were used to having there. So that was a problem, but we fairly quickly added them in, and as the artists needed them, they didn't need everything at once, which was nice, so we kind of got the basics working, and then later on added more advanced things as the artists used them. So yeah, it's worked out better than I expected. I was quite worried at the start because there was whole areas that were just missing, and things don't magically get added back. You have to spend a lot of time sometimes to really get them working. But yeah, it's been all right.
Campbell and I have roughly the same role. The difference is that he focuses more on working more closely with the artists, solving day-to-day problems, while I focus more on long-term features, bigger features that might take a few weeks to complete.
Oh my goodness. God. It's incredible.
Campbell has added copy and paste. That's horrible, but awesome.
Well, starting off with the artists, some of them hadn't really worked in this kind of environment before. They hadn't worked with developers even. They'd worked at studios and there was no option to change the software. So even though Blender was quite brought down to being quite basic, some of the artists didn't ask for things to be fixed. And we had to kind of tell them, you have to complain when things don't work. And they got the message pretty quick and they started complaining and asking for things to be added.
When you're working on a feature or something in Blender, there's always an interaction with the community. That's just the way the project is structured. Within the Durian project, I'm not so much influenced by what the community wants. What I do is based on what the artists here want. Of course, I still interact with the community about bugs in the features I develop or getting it to build on different platforms and things like that. But I guess in a project like this, there's less community, there's a bit less interaction with the community than usually. Because of course I get immediate feedback here. I don't really need to go to the community to get feedback.
Then it was a lot of back and forth between developers and artists. But at the moment, everything works kind of fine. And when actually going back to 2.4, it feels like being in Stone Age.
As an artist, it's quite cool to have a genuine say on various tools or how they could be tweaked. And there's not time for every request we'd like to have, but it's certainly more than you get with commercial software, just waiting for the next 6 months and then paying for a release that may or may not have what you want in it.
I've gone back to Blender 2.49 a couple of times just to kind of play around with or check to see if something is different or the same, or to kind of reference something. And it feels so clunky to use.
Every day when you get in, you double-click the SVN update logo on the desktop, and suddenly you have a new version of Blender that was compiled, right there on your computer, that has everything the most recent, and the things that Breck and Campbell have been working on are there.
I'm really liking how everything's more real-time, and I can animate while changing keys, and it's just very, very smooth to work with. So I think that's one of the main things I'm happy about. And yeah, in general, I'm ecstatic to use 2.5.
No story, maximum impact, whatever 16-year-olds like to make. Monsters, fighting, just a lot of special effects, explosions, 5,000 warriors going down a hill and fighting.
No story, maximum impact. I was oblivious to this. I really care about having a solid story to tell. But at the same time, you can do that with a lot of action. But it does affect the tone of the film. And I think from the outset, everyone sort of has a different conception of the project.
I hoped it to be sci-fi, but...
I saw Durian as a bit more darker, more epic.
Dark, slightly disturbed.
Colin really insisted on getting also a nice story and more attention for the script, which was in the end really good because it helped us getting funding from the film fund, for example.
I care about the story, so I can only really get behind and direct a film that I really understand and that I really like. Martin has a very interesting style that really works for, I think, comics better than it works for film, and it's one that lacks structure. The work he was presenting us, I didn't feel like I could direct, which is the main issue. It would be a film that I'd be interested to see, but not something that I can really get behind myself.
Martin couldn't really help us with this. He didn't have time to do this also, but mostly he didn't really even like the others. And why would you motivate a character? And that's, of course, if you are a 70-year-old grandmaster of the Dutch comic, you can say that, right? But for a 20-year-old beginning filmmaker, you would love to do it more in traditional ways, like with the character motivation, exposure, and then setting the conflict, and then having a quest and a resolution at the end. Those traditional things are good to hold on for a film project. So then that is how Esther got in.
There were some ideas already, plot-wise, and I kind of picked the most interesting one and then brought it out from there. And there were some details in the arena and the setting that came from Martin and that we could use very well.